Today I'm going to find out if I can move this cat that weighs 16,000 pounds with this winch that will pull 6,000 pounds and a log that's buried in the ground using mechanical advantage. Fingers crossed. Now before we get to the cat and moving a really daddy bear challenge with a daddy bear dead man, this little arrangement right here of stakes and ropes and a log is the mama bear dead man, and it holds a lot. I got this idea out of the book that you guys showed me in the comments to one of my moving heavy objects with mechanical advantage videos. Check this out. So I've got this set up imagining that my tractor is stuck and I need to pull it out and there's not a tree or a stump. You've got that. What we have here is something that can be used in concrete forming as well. We've got a 4x4 driven into the ground about a foot. It's tied back to a 2x4 that's driven into the ground about a foot, with this mule tape rope holding against the anchor point. And so that this doesn't tip over, it's tied to another 2x4 at the anchor point. And so that won't tip over, it's tied to a third. There's a lot of cumulative strength here. The weak point in this whole arrangement is the 4x4s driven into the ground. I could only get them in just so far with my 20-pounder. Let's see what happens when we put 3 tons of pull on a 3,000-pound tractor. Tires are creeping, 2 hands on the handle. The tractor is creeping, the dead man's not budging. I'm getting 1/4 of an inch of travel per 16 inches of rotation. That's the bottom line concept of mechanical advantage. A great deal of motion with little power translates to a small amount of motion with great power. But now I'm going to start that thing up and see if I can just let out the clutch and pull this thing out of the ground. All right, here we go. Nothing. I would say that's a success. We're going to try it with a bigger piece of iron here in a minute. So I love a square stake, and I love them in different lengths. I'm putting the 3-footers in here just as a way to hold this little imaginary bulkhead up in the air and tie them together real good. By the way, I can't find my original form setter, so I'm using a brand new off-the-shelf 5-pound classic from my friend Andrew Larson, who makes these things. So this dead man, unlike the ones that you just watched, is working by pushing against the load instead of pulling, which is not as effective. When you're forming concrete, that's what you got to do, is push against hydrostatic load. Speaking of hydrostatic load, it increases 150 pounds per vertical foot going up, which means this form is 2 feet high, which means that every square foot at the top has 150 pounds pushing on it. And every square foot at the bottom has 300 pounds pushing on it. So 300 plus 150 is 450 pounds of hydrostatic form pressure for every lineal foot of form 2 feet high. That's a lot. When I begin to pull against this, all of the strength is coming from Mother Earth. So the challenge is to attach these things to Mother Earth just as well as you can. screws. Maybe I should do it. This is kind of a cool demonstration. Some of you guys are yelling at me right now, get a turnbuckle! Haven't you heard of a turnbuckle, Wadsworth? Well, yes, we have heard of turnbuckles, and we use them, and we like them, and I used them. I've got several videos about that. But what we're doing here right now holds better than a turnbuckle at the top down to a stake or a dead man at the bottom. I'll show you the next move. Pretty snug. It's still going to want to unravel. So we're going to take another turn because we're going to put a terrible hold on it here in a second. And this is what makes it better than a turnbuckle. You hear that? Twisting a wire is a very fierce way to get some tension. And it breaks right at the wrong moment. What we're doing here is creating a situation where everything is pulling against that and against that, and this can't yield and that can't yield. Makes a big difference. What I've got to do now is rig up a way to run a chain or a strap through kind of the middle of this. So I'm just going to chop a hole out of there. You wouldn't do that if it was a concrete form, but I think it'll still demonstrate what we have to demonstrate. That might leak. Now here's a pro tip. When I was working for MS Concrete, I got yelled at one time because we were staking up curb. I don't remember what it was. We were putting the spacers and tying curb stakes together or something. And I was very neatly cutting off the wires right behind the twist. And Saul, I think his name was Saul, Latino guy in charge of their offsite work. Don't cut those off! Leave tails on there so when you're stripping the form, you don't have to get out your pliers to unwind it. Leave tails so you can wrap and unwrap with your bare hands and not have to chase down a set of lines. So if this looks silly, here's what we've got mocked up. Imagine this is a bulkhead that can't move. The 4x4 and the tractor are mimicking the load of the concrete. You're filling this up with concrete, you're vibrating it, you don't want it to move. That's what we're duplicating with the weight of the tractor and the distribution of the load of the 4x4 through the middle of the form system. The reason this is stronger, in my opinion, than a turnbuckle is that a turnbuckle is only as strong as the resistance to the bending of the stake that's driven into the ground. Or maybe you've got a series of stakes on a 4x6 down here. That's great. But this little move right here, as far as I can tell, twisting up and putting tension on that stake, which pushes and puts more pressure up here, and it just gets the whole system. It's pulling back against the dirt where this is already driven in a foot. It locks this into I'll call it a shear block, a brace panel, not just a brace, but a brace panel. I think that's better. Let's see how hard we can pull on that jet winch, chain winch, chain come along, copping hoist, call it what you will. We're going to put 6,000 pounds of pull on here, and see if this thing fails. I rather expected it. Is this failing or just coming tight? But no 2-foot tall concrete lift is going to push that hard right there. Tractor's scooching back just like it did with that other dead man off of our baby bear. Got a little bit of a bow pulled in these stakes, holding a big strain right there. I think we're still holding. Let's test it to yield. There it comes. We just went to yield. So we slid this 3,000-pound tractor, 4.5 or 5 inches before our little bulkhead lifted right out of the ground. That's not bad. So this is the second of the ways that Jan Adkins, in his book Moving Heavy Objects, describes. My dad and I did this. We raised an A-frame for loading logs, borrowed a backhoe from John Blodgett, dug a pit, threw in a log. You drop a log in a pit is what Mr. Adkins called it. Takes a lot of shovel work unless you've got an excavator, but as you can see, that cat won't pull hard enough to pull this out of here. You would have to disrupt 5 or 6 yards of 100% compacted earth to do it. But we're gonna go ahead on that winch, see if we can actually drag that cat back against this 5/8 choker, against a 16-inch diameter chunk, up against this old dry black mud. Anybody can do this if you got time. I mean, a pick and a shovel will get you a dead man that will hold almost anything you want to pull against. All right, now we're trying to slide the cat, or roll the cat, and slide the blade that's just resting with its own weight on the ground. A little tougher. So I don't know how to measure this, but I would guess that we're pulling, I don't know, make up a number, 5 or 8,000 pounds no, we're probably pulling 4,000 pounds of the 6,000 pounds this is supposed to be able to deal with. I'm making that up, but it's pretty hard. If we put a double purchase on this, we might be able to slide the whole thing. I'm going to put a little more down pressure on the blade, see if we can slide that with a 6,000 pound hoist. Just with my puny little worn out biceps, the mechanical advantage. I'm dragging 16,000 pounds back with the additional, that's on wheels, but with the drag of a 10-foot blade brushing off. You get the point. Put a double purchase on that, you'll pull twice as much. You know, you can just keep gaining that mechanical advantage. I think that book, Moving Heavy Objects, is brilliant. It's short, it's simple. You need to get that for your boys and girls for Christmas because the illustrations are compelling and the message is clear as a bell. You can get yourself out of a jam. Figure out how to make a tail hold, a dead man. Because sometimes you got to be able to pull on something really, really hard. Thanks for watching Essential Craft. And keep up the good work. Looks like the cat's moving. The log is creaking. Oh yeah. Cat's coming back here. I'm gonna drop the blade and see if this thing will pull the blade down. Pull the cat with the blade down on the ground. Okay, so these ropes are working. This one is fiddle string tight. This one's a lot tighter than it was when I just stretched it by hand. And this one is probably just about unchanged. but it's transferring the load back. It's taking a strain. If I started that cat, I could tear it right out, but I don't want to wreck my lawn.